Hello, this is Dr. Ayub. Today I like to introduce you with the upper extremity arterial supply, its anatomy and its physiology and pathophysiology, because there are three things that sometimes happen in related with the upper extremity, like subclavian still syndrome, Raynaud's phenomenon, Raynaud's syndrome, and thoracic outlet syndrome. Okay, so those three pathology or pathophysiology, so we will discuss gradually, but let's go with the anatomy first. Okay, upper extremity arterial supply. Let me give you the main distribution, then I will draw the diagram for the anatomy. Upper extremity arterial supply. Upper extremity arterial supply, we have to understand that there are two upper extremity, right and left, but their origin of supply is different. Okay, so now upper extremity arterial supply, so you can easily say there's a right upper extremity and the lower left upper extremity. Right upper extremity is supplied by the subclavian, but right subclavian artery, right subclavian artery. And this right subclavian artery is the major source of the right upper extremity arterial supply, but this subclavian artery is a branch of, brachiocephalic trunk. Brachiocephalic trunk, and on the left side, the left subclavian artery, it is a direct branch from aortic arch. Aortic arch. And the brachiocephalic trunk, as we know that it is the first branch of the aortic arch, and this brachiocephalic trunk carries the blood for the right common carotid artery and right subclavian artery. So this brachiocephalic trunk, if you go that way, that here right common carotid artery, and here the right subclavian artery. The right common carotid artery we discuss with the extracranial carotid system, extracranial cerebral system. We discuss with that. But now our point of interest is right subclavian artery. Right subclavian artery, we need to know what are those branches and what is the name of the continuation, what is the anatomical landmark of identifying the subclavian artery, and continuation of the subclavian artery is a brachial artery, axillary artery, and continuation of the axillary artery is a brachial artery, and the brachial artery splits into radial and ulnar artery, and the radial and ulnar artery that makes two arch, superficial and deep palmar arch, and from the palmar arch there is a metacarpal artery, from the metacarpal artery there is a digital artery. Okay, so we need to go up to that point. Okay, so now let me go that right subclavian artery is a continuation of let me see. Okay, axillary artery. From the axillary artery, there is a brachial artery. From the brachial artery, it splits into two major. One is a radial artery, another is ulnar artery. Okay, radial and ulnar artery, they form together, they form two palmar arch. Two palmar arch. One is say deep palmar arch, deep palmar arch, another is the superficial palmar arch. Palmar arch, and both palmar arch, they give the origin of the metacarpal artery. Okay, there are all threes. So these are the metacarpal artery, and from the metacarpal artery there are digital artery. Okay, so this is the metacarpal artery. So now I can show you metacarpal artery, and from the metacarpal artery there is okay. So these are the digital artery. Okay, so this is the arterial supply, and on the right side, on the left side, the left subclavian artery is a direct branch of the aortic arch. There is no brachiocephalic trunk on the left side. Brachiocephalic trunk, also we call it brachiocephalic artery, but trunk is a good one. Good name. And there is no left brachiocephalic trunk. So now from the aortic arch there it is a branch of Subclavian artery, left subclavian artery is a direct branch of the aortic arch. Okay, so now this subclavian goes to supply the left side of the upper extremity. So this left subclavian, then it is axillary. From the axillary artery, there is the brachial artery. From the brachial artery, there is a two artery. One is a radial artery, another is ulnar artery. Okay, and these two again forms two arches in the palmar. Okay, these are palmar arch. One is superficial, one is deeper, and from the palmar arch there is a metacarpal artery. And from the metacarpal artery there is a digital artery. So these are digital artery. Okay, so now I will draw the diagram with the anatomical landmark to understand the arterial supply of the upper extremity. I am drawing the right side first. Okay, this is aortic arch. Aortic arch. So this is brachiocephalic trunk, the first branch of the arch. This brachiocephalic trunk is split into two major branches. So this is brachiocephalic trunk. This is right common carotid artery, this is left common carotid artery, and this is left subclavian artery. So brachiocephalic trunk gives rise right brachiocephalic trunk and the right subclavian artery. So this is right subclavian artery. This right subclavian artery is the main source of the arterial supply of the right upper extremity, and this subclavian artery, both subclavian artery are high resistive blood vessels. Why? Because they don't supply the organ, they supply the muscle, skin, the harder tissues, okay, and dense tissues. So their resistivity index Ri is higher. Okay, so now subclavian artery gives couple of branches, 5-6 branches. So usually 5 branches. We will discuss all those things and I will show you. So subclavian artery branches, let me write down here first. Branches of subclavian artery. Number 1, vertebral artery. We call it VA. It is the first branch of the subclavian artery. Then thyrocervical. Thyrocervical trunk. Number 3, costocervical. Costocervical trunk. Number 4, internal thoracic artery. Internal thoracic artery. Number 5, dorsal scapular artery. Dorsal scapular artery. So these 5 branches from the cervical, from the subclavian artery. So now just let me show you first that subclavian artery is going to the upper extremity, and the subclavian artery ends subclavian artery ends at the outer border of the first rib. Outer border of the first rib. So this is first rib. Okay? And then its name is axillary artery. So this is subclavian artery, and the subclavian artery as the first branch is a VA, vertebral artery. Then another branch after the VA is internal thoracic artery, also known as intramammary artery or mammary artery. And the second branch parallel to the vertebral artery is thyrocervical trunk. Thyrocervical trunk. Then another artery called costocervical trunk. Why its name is costocervical trunk? Costocervical trunk. Because the first and second rib, they got their blood supply from the costocervical trunk. So it comes down and it gives blood supply to the first and second rib. Okay, so that's why its name is costo-cervical. It goes to the cervical neck area. Then another artery is a dorsal scapular. It supplies the blood to the dorsum of the scapular. There are two strong muscles over there, supraspinatus and infraspinatus. Okay, those two muscles is supplied by the dorsal scapular artery. So dorsal scapular artery, we're going to draw it here. Okay, so this is dorsal scapular artery. Okay, so now by the outer border of the first rib, okay, the rib is there. Okay, because the subclavian artery passes under the ribs. Now axillary artery. Axillary artery has 6 branches. 6 branches. What are those 6 branches of axillary artery? Branches of axillary artery. Subscapular artery, lateral thoracic artery, thoracoacromion, artery, then anterior circumference humeral artery, posterior circumference humeral artery, and there is one more, thoracolumbar artery, okay, thoracoacromion artery, anterior circumference humeral, posterior circumference humeral, and subscapular, dorsal scapular. Okay, so I will give you just immediately I will give you the, just give me 1 second, there is one more branches. Yes, I got it. Superior thoracic, lateral thoracic, thoracolumbar, subscapular, anterior circumflex, and posterior circumflex humeral. Superior thoracic. Superior thoracic artery. Okay, so these are the 6 branches arising from that small area, axillary artery. I will show you the branches, but let me give you the landmark. Axillary artery ends at the outer border of teres major muscle. Teres major muscle. I am drawing the teres major muscle. Okay, so this is teres major muscle. It goes behind. Okay, so now this is the teres. This is outer border of the teres major muscle. Let me draw. It is a muscle. Okay, so this is teres major muscle. So now we get the anatomical landmark. Subclavian artery ends at the outer border of the first rib, but it arises behind the right sternoclavicular junction, right here. Behind the junction, it brachiocephalic trunk is split. Okay, and it is also the lateral border of the scalene anterior muscle. Okay, so from there the subclavian artery starts, and then okay, let me make it little skinny because it looks like a okay. So now the axillary artery is from the outer border of the first rib to the outer border of the teres major muscles. They ask these questions. Okay, so now there is branches. So this is superior thoracic, and the lateral thoracic is going to the lateral side. So this is superior thoracic artery. This is lateral thoracic artery. Then thoracoacromion artery. So thoracoacromion artery, it arises from here, thoracoacromion artery, then anterior circumference humeral, it goes like this, and there's a posterior circumference humeral that goes behind, it comes like this. This is anterior circumference humeral, posterior circumference humeral, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 superior thoracic, posterior circumference, thoracoacromial or lateral thoracic, and subscapularis. Subscapularis, it goes under the scapula. There's a subscapular, the muscle, it gets supplied by the subscapularis. I'm just drawing it here. Subscapularis, SS. So now, when the axillary artery ends, so then brachial artery starts. So this is brachial artery. Brachial artery is in the arm. It starts from the outer border of the teres major muscle and it ends at the cubital fossa and at the cubital fossa, sometimes little above or sometimes little down, it splits into radial and ulnar artery. Split into radial and ulnar